This is K-Rockcast, the podcast where music and perspectives collide.
I'm Anne, a music lover who's the ultimate fan.
And I'm Kelly, a professional musician. Join us as we dive into the world of the Rose and other Korean and Asian rock bands.
Sometimes we'll agree, sometimes we'll wildly disagree, but what's guaranteed is a passionate, hilarious, and unfiltered conversation about the music that unites us and the bands that inspire us.
On today's show.
I will warn you, if you ever want to come back, I may not be as kind because if you keep coming back on our podcast, you're no longer a guest. You're part of the family. Everybody, we're back. This is episode 26, Into the Heavy Moon. Kelly, this is so exciting because we are bringing our listeners and viewers another artist spotlight interview today. And this was a quick turnaround. This was an artist you brought to us recently as an artist recommendation in our Into the Wardrobe episode, part 1. And we have the pleasure of sitting down with Michael Kim-Sheng for an interview. Kelly, why don't you before we have the interview, why don't you remind our listeners and viewers a little bit about Michael's background?
So I found Michael via Instagram and he just miraculously turned up in my algorithm feed and I fell in love with his music straight away. So I do have a soft spot for classical music and original soundtracks. So it literally played to my heart straight away. So Michael is a classical composer. He is classically trained. He went through university, studied music. And when I say he went through university, I mean he was educated at the Jacobs School for Music and he went to the McGill University where he won the SOCAN Award. And that is a prize for emerging composers in 2018. Michael has a history of music. I think we can literally say it is in his blood. His mum's a music teacher. And so he began his, I think probably the nice way of describing it, his relationship with a piano from a very tender age of 4. And it was there and it has been with him ever since. The music through the house flowed with the students coming in and out. So he was listening to Chopin and Debussy and so many other classical artists, Mozart, all the works, growing up. And when your parents listen to music and when it's there, it's ingrained in you. It becomes part of your DNA. And you can hear that in everything that he does. His music is beautiful. It has a lush warmth and undertow. It's fantastic. And his debut album was Heaven of Lavender, and that was released in 2019. And he followed that with Heavy Moon in 2021. Now, I think he started to get a little bit more of a foothold in social media circles and people started to pick up on what he was doing, which is a wonderful thing because this guy has, he has all the leanings of all the classics. So you've got, all the classic composers there, but also the modern day composers. So we've got Marianelli, we've got Downey, we've got Hans Zimmer in there as well. I can hear all of those things. And I'm 100% sure that anybody who listens to his music will appreciate it and adore it.
Yeah. One of the things as I've been listening to his music since you introduced him to us in that episode, and then knowing that, we got him on as an interview, I've just been really consuming his music. I was really struck by the inclusion of the soprano voices. And as listeners and viewers, Kelly is the professional musician and has the rich music background. I do not. And so I think my preconceived notion of classical was simply instrumentation. Like strings. That's what strings in a piano. Like that's all classical is, right? Like I
Yeah.
don't know.
Oh,
It's what I
yeah.
thought.
Yeah.
And I have to say, including these soprano voices, it brings it such richness and depth and the emotion. And I think you'll hear in the interview, Michael talks a lot about his music conjuring feeling and
Yeah.
emotion in his listeners, and I feel like he achieves that so well through including the soprano voices in it. It's just so lovely, and
I
it was
keep
such a wonderful
I keep
surprise.
I keep telling you the human voice is a miraculous thing and it can never be replicated, and there's a reason that we all hark
Yeah.
back to that voice.
Yeah, it's so true. You have talked about that in previous
Mm.
episodes. You're right. I'm kind of thinking of that. All right, listeners, we're going to move into the interview and we know you're going to enjoy it. Here's our guest, Michael Kim-Sheng.
So today we would like to introduce you to an incredible artist. This is Michael Kim-Sheng, and this is something ever so slightly different. We are talking modern day classical, and it's just a great honor for you to be with us. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
And we've got to introduce that's Baby, by the way, that's just walked past.
Yeah,
Yeah, we have the honor of an extra special guest. So we get Michael and Baby, his cat, today. We love it.
she's gonna be roaming around the whole time, probably. So.
Yeah, we love it.
So we're going to just run through some quick questions and just get a little bit more information out of Michael and run through a bit of his backstory. So to start off with, Michael, do you want to introduce yourself to our listeners and just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Michael Kim-Sheng. I'm a classical composer, classically trained, and I love cats. I love reptiles. I love animals. I love eating out. I love sushi, that kind of stuff. As a musician, Um, I just come from a background just of a lot of different influences. I've had a lot of influences from jazz, electronic music, rock music, and I just try to take everything that I've liked from all these genres into something that's what I consider kind of like a musical experience. Because
Mm.
when I talk about music being very about the feeling, um, I really think about just the sensory experience of hearing pleasant sounds. I love a chord that I heard. I love how the piano sounds in this moment. And I just think about how it feels when I hear it. And so from that experience, when I was a child and listening to Mozart on the radio, and I heard a specific line of music that I really liked and connected to, I try to bring that experience to life and just like magnify that in the concert hall. And so when I have an audience come to the concert on October 3rd, my goal is to just give them an experience where it's really sensational and it's just like a
Mm.
sensory kind of um, auditory experience. So
Yeah.
I chose a hall that sounds really beautiful, um, and there's going to be four sopranos in that
Wow.
hall. It's just gonna like sound like a synthesizer, kind of like a wall of sound, and um, that's just kind of my take on music. It's just that sort of. I like to use the word experience.
I love that. Yeah. And I have to say, like, as I been listening to your music since Kelly introduced you in our previous episode, Into the Wardrobe, which
Mm.
was kind of a different kind of artist, Kelly. Like,
Yeah.
it's not, I'll be honest, not
Yeah.
your typical type of artist that you bring. But I think what was wonderful, Michael, was our listeners, after they watched and listened to that episode, started reaching out. To be honest, we had multiple listeners reach out to us, very interested in who you were and your music. And so as we dug in more to your music and then hearing you talk about all the influences, now I feel like you're not too far off from kind of rock or electronica influence, that maybe we usually talk about. So I love that we can bring you to more people. I
Mm.
like what you said about kind of growing up in music and, music, how it's always had this feeling that's being evoked with you. Talk more about like as a child, you're growing up with Chopin, Debussy, Mozart around you in your household. What were those feelings as a child consuming that music and being around that music? How did it make you feel then?
That's a very interesting question, and it's it's a loaded question, because the experience of growing up, I was trained on the piano since a
Mm.
very young, and my mom was a piano teacher, so it was kind of like come home from school and get on to wash your hands and start playing the piano. And so from that, I developed a very strong bond with the piano. It wasn't always pleasant, but it was one that
Mm.
I really became familiar with the piano. My hands fall very naturally on the piano. And since my mom was a piano teacher, I would basically hear, Debussy, Chopin, just always in the house. So when students
Mm.
came in, they'd be playing the same music. And then as I got older, I found myself playing the same music. And the interesting thing was when I went to college, I realized I wasn't really good at reading music. Like I couldn't really read music because I'd heard the same songs being played so many times.
Mm.
And then when I played it, like I would just kind of play it by ear and just kind of
Yeah.
like rather than actually reading the notes on the page. And so I was that was an interesting experience for me. In terms of listening to music, I remember there's a passage of Mozart, a piano concerto played by Murray Pariah, and there's just a little part where he does kind of a trill, um, and I remember that being kind of one of my earliest musical memories,
Mm.
because I would tell my mom to like replay that part. Can you replay that part? I remember a section of the music, where when my mom was teaching that part, she said to me, she called me over. She said, "Hey, we're about to play that your favorite part," and they played it, and I said, "Oh, that's not the part. Like that I didn't connect to it," and
Mm.
Mm.
that became kind of a very interesting thing about classical music for me, where it's like that the way he played it in that specific recording is what I liked. It's not necessarily like the set of notes. It's not really just
Mm.
like, where like it was just kind of that moment was captured, and that's kind of the I'm running on the tangent here, and I'm just
No,
No,
go for the
no, I kind of
tangent.
like
Go
what you're
for it.
saying. So, yeah, it's at times it can be about not just the notes, but how those notes are played.
exactly, and I think
Yeah.
that's one of the beauties of live music that I've never really got to explore yet as a composer. But it's
Mm.
just that moments in the hall will forever remain, special because they
Mm.
came from just the spontaneity of everything, and um, I think like that's something that was a very early musical lesson that I learned as a musician, but it wouldn't like it was also something I struggled with for years as a
Yeah.
Mm.
composer in the classical space, where I thought like, how do I recreate this moment in a score?
Mm.
But it's not something that you can recreate in a score. It's something that you have to rehearse with the musicians, get to know the musicians, and really learn how to communicate. Um,
Mm.
and so a lot of what I experienced as a child with music definitely informed like everything I do now. And
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. So, with your concert that's coming up on October 3rd, you have musicians that are performing your pieces. And do you act like the director then? So, have you been kind of working with them up to this point to ensure, I guess, the experience, as you mentioned, that they create through their performance is what you
Mm.
envision?
yeah, totally. So I recorded Heavy Moon, my album, in 2020,
Hmm.
and there I had a conductor working with me, where I was kind of in the recording booth. So And then after that, I re-recorded my album in 2022, a year later, in
Mm.
a studio. And then, so this will be the third time that we run through this music with the same musicians. So I have the same
Mm.
sopranos who recorded it the first time and the second time. I have almost the same string players. There's some new string players, but I think the sopranos are the ones that I feel like really encapsulate like the identity of the sound of this album. So having them on it is just really cool. They've developed with me through the music. They've heard it, and this time I will be conducting the
Oh,
show, and
wow.
so I've been actually taking lessons. I've never conducted in my life, but
Wow.
I felt that I conducting is so interesting because it's just like the musical gestures. You're just kind of like expressing that through your body, and you're
Mm.
communicating it through gestures. And I've always had to use words to describe things, and now I'm getting to use my physical body and direct the ensemble and learn. Oh, time to cue the second soprano. Ready? Boom! And I'm learning all these things, and the way you cue them will determine how they interpret the next passage.
Mm.
Mm.
And so I'm the music. I've definitely grown with it. I've lived with it, and it's not a new piece of music. It's been sitting in my collecting dust for a few years, and I started posting about it, and then I've been hearing it as I post it, and then now I'm getting ready to perform it. It's just revisiting an old friend and seeing them in new ways all the time. So it's been a treat. It's
Yeah.
also been exhausting, but it's also
Mm.
a treat because um, this is this is everything I've ever wanted in my life. It's
Yeah.
just that this opportunity. So
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful.
yes.
So your music blends classical and very traditional basics of music, but you also have this really lovely sort of concept of electronic elements in there as well. Do you think of yourself a little bit more as a bridge between musical styles?
I would definitely say that I've trained myself. I've developed the skills to kind of be a bridge. I think that I've developed my skills as a producer in
Mm.
pop music and as a classical composer. I've been formally trained as a classical composer. But in terms of genre and what the music that I feel like I'm creating, I think I'm just kind of filling in space. I think just kind
Yeah.
of a space where I find a lot of similarities from other composers like Max Richter, and I've taken a lot of influence from Ennio Morricone and Ludovico Einaudi and people like that. And I don't really, I feel like a bridge is hard to say, but definitely like a collection of all of these things, kind of like a web
Yeah.
of genres.
Mm.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, it's kind of hard
It's
to
it's it's
really
always
explain.
hard to explain, isn't it? When someone just throws it at you and you're just like, oh, it's my music.
Yeah, I think in terms of the way it will be presented, maybe when I have more budget and more a bigger audience, is I want to present this classical music in more of a pop kind of setting with like
Yeah.
Mm.
lighting, visuals, and so I think that in that sense that can become more of a bridge. But I think right now I'm focusing on just like a very classical presentation where it's like
Yeah.
people are sitting in the concert hall and but yeah, I think my bigger picture is definitely building more of a bridge of like, hey, I want to bring in all the people who like classical music, and then I want to bring in the people who like don't really know classical music but want to get to know it, and
Mm.
then that's the kind of bridge I think I want to create is through the audience. And I think I've been successful in doing it some part because I do get like people writing like I don't know classical music but I like what I hear, and
Yeah.
I've never
Mm.
listened to classical music but I like this a lot. And so and then I also get on the contrary classical people saying this is not classical music, this is
Oh.
and then they'll come out with some thing. But I don't really say this is classical music because I really believe it's classical music. I just think that
Yeah.
it's a word that's very loaded with tradition and
Mm.
history, and I think that people recognize the word. And so So to say what it really is, I can't answer
Yeah.
because I think it's still very fresh, and I'm still
Mm.
like exploring what I think I'm still in my early stages
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
composer.
I mean,
Yeah.
I can definitely hear in what you're doing. I can hear that movement also to soundtracks. I can hear that sort
Mm.
of larger sphere, that larger world developing within there. I This hints of sort of Hans Zimmer and things like that that are sort of creeping
Oh,
in, where you've got
yeah.
that beautiful melding of worlds. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, and I think that brings people in. I think the term classical, it's a very loaded word, but it's also a very elitist word as well. And I think people feel a little bit
Totally.
sort of, oh, it's classical music, I can't listen to it because I'm not of that world. But I think it's beautiful that you're sort of pulling people in and creating a bigger sphere, and that's such a wonderful thing. It really is.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I love Hans Zimmer too. He's really cool.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think our next question kind of keeps this dialogue going. Do you see parallels between these classical composers such as Chopin or Debussy and then more modern producers or rock musicians today?
That's an interesting question. I mean, undoubtedly, you will hear, I think, a lot of Debussy in music that you hear today. I mean, Debussy is
Mm,
so influential in his sound world, and I think that he kind of allowed people to just like make like add sounds because they liked it, rather than it
Mm.
like a very structured and it's more of like a feeling based music.
yeah.
In terms of that, I think like in terms of that, the bridge of like Debussy and Chopin and like today's music, I think it's just hard to track just because there's so much music that happened between, and now music is just like evolving every day, and there's a new sound that's
Mm,
coming out every month or something. But for sure, I mean, I don't hear generally like direct influences, but I also hear sometimes people bringing in Beethoven in their songs. I just got like
Mm.
a couple of
Mm.
things where this guy was like, I wrote this for Beethoven, and it's like his name is like Lil Man J, and there's like Fur Elise in the background, and
Mm.
yeah, it's totally like different from my music. It's kind of it's got humor to it. And another guy who does rap, he makes rap music, hip hop music, and he says, I wrote this for Beethoven as well,
Mm.
but then he's rapping to Vivaldi's Four Seasons. I know it's like
Mm.
definitely a kind of a clickbait tactic, but
yeah.
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
got musicians behind him with ski masks, and they're playing,
I love
and
that.
he's just it's the energy. Yeah, the energy is great, and I'm hearing kind of a rise of old classics coming in and classical music coming in as like samples for sure.
Yeah.
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 Um,
I think like today, Kelly and I've said this on the podcast different times. I feel like more and more music just feels genreless.
mhm.
Mm,
That or people are not as feeling the need to have to be pigeonholed into a particular genre anymore, that your music can have influences from across genres. But for a music artist, it becomes challenging because when you're out there, everybody wants to put you in a category, and then it
very much
becomes
so.
hard to say what your one category, truly is.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
I think a lot of being an independent musician is kind of
Mm,
allowing yourself to be who you are without letting outside forces determine your label. And
yeah.
I think it just, I think, yeah, people will definitely try to say what things are. And at the end of the day, it's always changing. And I think the genreless comment, I think, is very applicable to how music is today, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one of the next questions we've got for you, and it's a long question, I will warn you. I've had to just move my screen over so I can actually see what it is. So you've said many compositions come from spontaneous feelings of being moved. Can you walk us through that moment and what it looks like for you? How a feeling becomes a piece of music and how it evolves? You can understand why I
Mm.
had to read it.
Yeah, that's a great question. So like the spontaneous feeling and like how that evolves into a
Yeah,
composition is the
yeah,
question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good question. I will literally sit in a room and I'll punch away at a bunch of different scores. So I'll literally have like 10 different 15-second excerpts and I'll just keep going through them and I'll just keep going through them. And then there's this moment where you're just writing and then you go, oh wait, I see something. And you don't really know that you see it. You just feel it and then you're going
yeah.
there and boom, you hit a moment and you said, oh, that thing is really
That's it.
cool.
Yeah,
Like I like that. And then that's a feeling that it brings me a lot of like anxiety, but also a lot of excitement because it's kind of like this expectation of, oh wait, I want this to be something cool versus, I want to finish this. I want to see what this becomes. And usually when it's just like really there, like that balance between of not saying too much right away and just really like there's just something that happens and then before
mm,
you know it, the piece is completely written.
Mm-hmm.
And so it will take me a month to write a piece, I think. But then I will actually be writing it probably 3 or 4 days of that whole month.
yeah,
The rest of the time I'm just kind of like skipping through. And the thing is, I personally can't compose if I'm not excited about the material, and that's why I think people are able to connect to the music because I think I have generally accessible tastes. I love the movies that are top 10. And I love the top 40 hits in music. So I think I have accessible taste and I follow I like what's popular
mm,
generally. So for me, it's just I really trust my instincts. I really trust my intuition and so everything is just based on like how I feel about the material and the musical material, and then um, that's how my music gets made. It's kind of a factory of things getting recycled and thrown into the trash. And I have a folder that's like draft one, draft two, or like, and just random names. It's incredibly
yeah,
messy. And then one out of that whole folder will just make it into the final process. And that experience is probably the best experience in composing. It's just like when a piece just falls together and comes together
mm,
and it's just there in your hands and you like what you created and it's fulfilling. So yeah, that's I think that's generally my experience
yeah,
composing.
Your album Heavy Moon, like as a composer, I'm just thinking about how maybe your process of pulling all of those songs together into one body of work that you want to present as an album might be different than, Kelly in a band that has songs with lyrics that have themes coming through and maybe the message of the song. Like, do you start with a theme? Like, did you start with Heavy Moon as a theme and you're building that feeling as you're composing these songs? Or did you just compose a group of songs and then sit back and say, what theme might all these have? Or, how do I pull this together as a body of work? Which way do you tend to work when you're pulling it together to form an album?
For Heavy Moon, I definitely composed 8 pieces and
Mm.
saw some sort of trend in terms
Mm.
of the language. Of course, I had been 2 years out of my master's degree when I started writing, so I had 2 years to really kind of get away from academia
mm,
and really focus on a musical language that I felt really genuine in. And I think like Heavy Moon was just the first sort of set of songs where I'm like, this is something I really enjoy composing. I
Mm.
really like writing this. And so I really love this ensemble. I love the sound world. And so I just set out to write 8 songs and then put titles onto them after. And I think
Mm.
um, Heavy Moon was just very applicable to just my life, I think, just kind of like the experience of being awake at night and it feeling just sort of somber and heavy in some way.
Mm.
And um, I think that's what just made the album come together. You know, I think it's more of a trust thing. I just kind of
Mm.
trust the process. But I'm thinking about making my next album, and I think it's very much encapsulated in a theme. And
Mm.
I think it will be. I think I'm going to have a theme, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to write according to that theme. And
Mm. I
I'm
love
sure,
that.
yeah, I think it's going to be different. But I think I'm pretty sure the process is going to be just like heavy. I'm just going to be scrapping away and it's
Mhm.
sticks. But um, but
But
yeah.
it sounds like it's a different challenge for you in terms of a different way you're going to approach the
Mm.
body of work. So I think it's great as an artist to continue to push yourself and evolve your process.
Mhm.
I love the clips that I got to watch on your Instagram account when you go to people on the street
Mm,
and you play your music and just seeing their
mm,
reactions. I just loved that. Like for me, again, kind of, about music and feeling and seeing their genuine, um, reaction of just how emotionally moving I think your
Mm.
music is personally to me as I listen to it.
mm.
I feel like if I went to your concert, I feel like I would start bawling by the end.
She will.
And
I
I
can
don't mean
tell
that
that.
as like a bad
She
thing, but
will.
just
I
like
think you can
I
see
feel
it.
like it evokes a lot of emotion
Mm,
in the listener, and that's
mm.
just been such a pleasure to watch all those videos on your
Oh, thank
Instagram.
you.
Do you get surprised? Like, how have you reacted to seeing people's reactions live there to your music?
Oh, so I've done that. I did that shoot one time in downtown LA, and
Hmm.
yeah, I was nervous, very nervous, because we my photographer was out there asking people, and you know he's really great at that. But I was very nervous. That you know, I mean, at a certain point, didn't I kind of just wanted to see what honest reaction I'd get,
Hmm.
but interacting with people in such a way was nerve wracking.
Mm.
But yeah, the really the responses I got where people really lit up. It was very touching. You know, I didn't
Yeah.
I it's been very this whole experience with social media has been really wild to me. Like I never expected that.
Hmm.
My music was largely unheard for the 3 years it was out, and
Mm.
Hmm.
just by chance I started posting, and yeah, it's a shock to me, and it's really inspired me to write more music,
Hmm.
which I have yet to get to after this concert because this concert is taking up
Everything,
my
I can
entire life.
imagine. Yeah.
It's taking up everything. I'm sleeping and I'm thinking about it, and
Yeah.
but yeah, it's incredible, and I'm humbled by it, and I'm inspired by it, and I just feel really grateful and
Yeah.
just rejuvenated by the reception. And so
Yeah.
that's something I want to continue to explore and take music as far as I can and see the impact it can, can have. And
Yeah. I love that. Do you feel any responsibility to kind of carry certain classical traditions forward, or do you want to just reinvent them?
oh, I just want to, I mean, I want to have fun with it, honestly.
Mm.
And I want to make sure that, so the thing is, like, like, pretty, well, I can't say this about myself. I'm a pretty, like, humorous guy, like, with people that I'm really close with.
Mhm.
And, if you look at my older posts, like, I'm dressed up as old, I wore, like, a white wig and, like an 18th century outfit. And I was, like,
Yeah.
yeah, like, I wanted to do, like, really weird content.
Yeah.
And then when I've started seeing comments where people would say, like, this reminds me of, like, my grandpa that passed, or this reminds
Mm.
me of, like, you know the last goodbye. you
Mm.
know I feel like I have a responsibility to respect that in a way,
Mm.
Yeah.
that it's truly an emotional experience that the music is giving people, and I have to be sincere about it.
Mm.
And that kind of changed my outlook. I just feel like I have a responsibility there,
Mm.
in terms of people are so vulnerable and open with me, and then
Mm.
I will like, if I just like make a joke about it, or it's
Yeah.
not respectful.
Yeah.
and
Mm.
and I think that that's something I'm learning myself, is like how to
Mhm.
reciprocate that vulnerability. And I
Yeah.
have it in music. My music is very vulnerable. It's
Yeah.
Oh,
very,
yeah.
very genuine to how I felt when I wrote it,
Mm.
and to continue to express it and to share it in that way, giving people that opportunity to be vulnerable, I think is very important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So some artists say that they can see colours and others hear textures. How do feelings translate into sounds for you?
Yeah, I imagine a lot of the sounds.
Mm.
I daydream and I hear them, and obviously when I daydream and I hear them and I get like, oh, I need to write that down,
Yeah.
nothing
Mm.
gets translated. So that daydreaming is not music that I will necessarily write down, but it's just like the sensation of that inspires me to write.
Mm.
So I will either imagine just like a wind, and like what would the wind sound like. I imagine a tree, and like what does that tree sound like. Or I will literally imagine an ensemble performing music, and I'm like, what does this music sound like.
Mm.
And so yeah, it's just, for me, it's just like imagining it, and if I feel excitement towards that imagination, I write it down, the ideas, the general ideas, and then try to compose, or I just enjoy it, and go to sleep or something. It's
Yeah.
just that constant. It's just like spontaneous. It doesn't really, like, I can't really force it too much. Usually, it
Mm.
happens when I do like mundane tasks. I was when I was a dishwasher. I would have a notebook next to me, and I would write down
Mm.
ideas, because I'm just like passing through the dishes, and then I'll hear sounds, and I'm like, wait, I gotta write that down, and I'll write it down, and then at the end of the night, it's like this soaked notepad, and I don't
Mhm.
even like use it. It's just like it's just destroyed. But I'm like, I had that outlet, as
Yeah.
I was working, and I think that really contributed a lot to Heavy Moon, where it was just like that imagination just was getting stronger and stronger, and I was like, you know what, I gotta do something about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like that's why people always come up with their best ideas like in the shower, right? Like
Yeah, totally.
doing those mundane things and your mind is just kind of on autopilot sometimes, or and you can process things that way. Okay, we got kind of a fun question next. If Chopin and Debussy and let's say Radiohead,
Okay.
Michael, sat down at a table, what kind of music are they going to make together?
Oh, probably some weird electronic beats, like where they're like hooking up like stuff to plants and stuff, and like giving it like
Yeah.
weird water, like Gatorade, and then they're gonna um like uh wave all sorts of wind around them, and then they're gonna like, and Chopin will probably be like, you know um creating some device that's like a keyboard, and playing his nocturnes on them. So I imagine it would just be wild. It'd
I
be
love
wild.
that.
Yeah, I think that'd be cool. That would be a cool set. I would sit in that session. I would. I would definitely.
I
Yeah.
love that.
So you are playing Heavy Moon in its entirety on October the 3rd. So do you want to
Hmm.
tell our listeners all about the show, where it's happening, and tickets, etc., all the details of it?
Yeah. So I will be performing Lake and Resonance Within, as well as Heavy Moon.
Mm.
So it's about an hour-long program. I will be conducting the first four songs, and then finally conducting the last two. I don't know if that's sharing too much information about the show, but um, I'll be conducting it. We'll be playing Heavy Moon in its entirety, and it will be happening in Zipper Hall, and that's the hall where I originally recorded my album.
Oh,
So
wow.
Oh,
it's
wow.
just what you hear is going to be reimagined live. Um, there are going to be 10 musicians on stage, 10 musicians recorded Heavy Moon, and um, its doors open at 7 p.m. And you can get your tickets at tour.michaelkimsheng.com. You also have an opportunity to get a merch bundle where you'll get a
Oh,
t-shirt,
nice.
CD, and a tote bag and a signed thank you card.
Nice.
And otherwise, yeah, it's just going to be, it's the premiere. It's the premiere of Heavy Moon. So it's the very first time it's ever going to be performed. And so once that's done, there will never be a premiere ever again. So you'll see me at my peak nervousness and my peak excitement. And then on, it'll just be, I'll be more comfortable. And um, so this is kind of like a first time for sure. I've
Yeah.
never conducted, never performed this music, so it's really exciting. Um,
Yeah, well, we're excited to promote it. Listeners, we'll have the link and all the information for the concert and the
Yeah.
tickets and the episode description. So be sure that you check that out. All right, we always wrap up, Michael, on our standard show with kind of a fun would you rather sort of challenge. But
okay.
we thought you're our guest, and we are not evil to guests. I'm evil to Kelly,
She's terrible with
but I'm not
me.
evil to
She
our
gives
guests.
me the worst questions ever. The worst questions ever.
Oh, wow.
But I will be kind to you today. I will warn you, if you ever want to come back, I may not be as kind
No.
because if you keep coming back on our podcast, you're no longer a guest. You're part of the family. But
Yeah.
your first appearance will be kind.
Okay.
So here's your would you rather. So you are having your music performed, okay, in either Sydney Opera House or at headlining at Coachella. I know you're a California guy, so
Yeah.
this has got to be hard.
Okay. Would I rather have?
Yeah, what would you rather pick?
go?
Which is your dream venue? Which
Oh,
one?
headlining Coachella would be awesome.
There you
Okay,
go.
that was kind of quick. That was like no thought put into that.
I thought there was gonna be a second moment where it's like, would you rather perform in Coachella and forget what music you're performing, or
No, that will be next time.
Yeah, we'll put the evil ones in next time, Mike.
No, that's
yeah.
next time you
No, I
come
think-
on.
Oh, but the more I think about it now, it's harder because I'm like, wait, so Sydney Opera House.
I know, isn't Sydney Opera House the cream of the crop in terms of like a orchestra venue?
Totally.
I'm sorry, Royal Albert Hall. I have to represent home. Royal Albert Hall, thank you.
Oh,
There you go.
but I do ultimately have to go to Coachella.
Yeah.
How cool is that, right? Headlining Coachella and it being like classical music, like that would be so cool.
Yeah,
That
that
would
would
be
mean
really
something
cool.
weird happened in the way music is digested. That would mean that like something happened, and then people are like, "Oh, wait, we want classical to headline Coachella," and I'm like, "Okay, then something happened."
Hey,
Yeah.
weirder things have happened, Michael.
Yeah,
You
there's
know?
always got to be a first.
You never know.
There has.
There's always got to be a first.
Right.
And then we can say, hey, we called it here on K-Rock Cast. So
We like doing that.
remember
every now and
us when you're huge, headlining Coachella.
Of course. No. But thank you. This is my first podcast appearance too, so this has been great.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. This was a wonderful conversation about your music. We're excited listeners for you to enjoy Michael's music more. If you're in the LA area, please go see the concert. We'll have those links for the tickets. And yeah, thank you so much, Michael. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you, Kelly, for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. That wrapped our great interview with our artist spotlight guest, Michael Kim-Sheng, into the Heavy Moon. Please rate our podcast, leave us feedback and comments about this episode. We always love to hear your feedback. Follow us across social media, Instagram, TikTok, X, YouTube. We are at KROK_cast all across the board.
Click here to subscribe.
And listeners, we are now on Patreon. Yes. Join Patreon, become a member for some great benefits like exclusive content, virtual hangouts, and discounts on upcoming K-Rock Cast merch. Email us at krock.cast@gmail.com if you want to give us feedback or send us a line. We love to read your emails. We respond to Kelly responds, not we, Kelly. Kelly responds to every email. So if you ever worry, you're like, I hate emailing somebody and then they never respond to you. That is not what we do here at K-Rockcast. We respond to every email. So please keep them coming. And also don't forget to check out our website, www.krockcast.com. All right. See you in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Bye.